Hello friends, welcome to my new data structures and algorithm in Java tutorial series video. Friends, in this tutorial we will discuss how to insert node at the end of a circular singly linked list in Java. So friends, let's suppose we are given an empty circular singly linked list. So when the circular singly linked list is empty, we know that the last node points to null. And in order to understand what this last node is, you need to watch my previous tutorials. So in this tutorial we will be discussing how to insert a node at the end of a circular singly linked list in Java. So let's see the demonstration of this algorithm step by step. So we also know that when the circular singly linked is empty, length is 0. Now in order to insert a node in a circular singly linked list at the end, the first step we do is we basically create a node and we'll pass the data. So here we have created one node having the data as 1 and which is being referred by this temp node and whose next is pointing to null. Now we want to insert this node at the end of a circular singly linked list. So moving ahead. So the first step we check is whether the last is equal to null or not. So if the last is equal to null, then we know that circular singly linked is empty. So therefore the condition in if block comes out to be true. So here the first step we do is we simply assign the value of temp to last. Now as the circular singly linked list is empty, so therefore there are no nodes. And as we want to insert this temporary node at the end of the circular singly linked list, so when we insert this temporary node into the empty list, we know that after its insertion, this would be the only node in the circular singly linked list. Therefore, last should point to this node. So in the first step, we are simply assigning value of temp to last. So it would look something like this. Moving ahead. Now in the second step, we are assigning value of last to last.next. So why we are doing this step is we need to fulfill circular singly linked list property that last next should point to first node. And as we know that this is the only node in the circular singly linked list, therefore the last and the first node is the node itself. So we are assigning value of last to last.next. So it would look something like this. So this link is gone and now this last.next will refer to the node itself. So it would look something like this. And in the last step we'll simply increment the length by 1 because we have successfully inserted the node at the end of a circular singly linked list. So friends, once this algorithm is executed, we know that initially circular singly linked list was empty and now it contains only one node, so it is referred by last because this is the only node and its next is pointing to the first node, which is the node itself. So now if we call this algorithm again and we want to insert one more node, so let's see the demonstration of the algorithm. Now in the first step we'll simply create the list node and provide the data which we have passed into the method. So it would look something like this. The temp is pointing to the node having data as 8 and whose next is pointing to null. Now let's say we want to insert this node at the end of a circular singly linked list. So let's see the demonstration step by step. So we check whether last is equal to null or not. So now the last is pointing to one node, therefore it's not equal to null. Therefore the condition in if block comes out to be false. So the else part will be executed. So in the else block, the first step we do is we assign the value of last.next to temp.next. So here why we are doing this step is as we want to insert this temporary node at the end of a circular singly linked list, we know that after its insertion, the node which is referred by temp would be the last node. So if it is a last node, then its next should point to the first node. And how to reach to the first node? We know that currently the node which is referred by last, its next is the first node. Therefore we are simply assigning last.next value to temp.next. So it would look something like this. So this link will be removed and it would refer to the first node, and in order to reach the first node we know that last next refers to the first node. Therefore, temp next will now refer to the node having data as 1. So it would look something like this. So currently you see we have two nodes where temporary next is pointing to this first node. So moving ahead, and in the second step we are assigning value of temp to last.next. Now here you can see last.next is referring to itself, and we know that when we insert this node, last next should refer to this node because then it will form a chain. So we are simply assigning value of temp to last.next. So it would look something like this. So now this link will be gone and now it should refer to this temp node. So moving ahead, and in the last step we are simply assigning value of temp to last. Now we are doing this step is because we have inserted the node at the end of a circular singly linked list, and we know that we are keeping track of this last pointer. So after this temporary node is inserted into circular singly linked list, we know that this becomes the last node. Therefore we need to assign the value of temp to last, so that last refers to the last node of a circular singly linked list. So it would look something like this. So in the final step we'll simply increment the length by 1. The circular singly linked list has two nodes, and we can also see that the last next is referring to this first node. Now friends, let's suppose we want to insert one more node into this circular singly linked list. So we'll execute this algorithm again and we'll pass the data into the method. So let's see the demonstration of this algorithm step by step. So in the first step we'll simply create a list node and we'll refer it to by temporary variable. So here you can see we have simply created a temporary node having data as 10 and whose next is pointing to null. And now we want to insert this node at the end of the circular singly linked list. So let's see the demonstration of this algorithm step by step. Now the first step will check whether last is equal to null or not. So currently last is pointing to the second node, therefore it's not null. So the condition in if block comes out to be false. So the else part will be executed. So the first step in else part we do is we simply assign the value of last.next to temp.next. So here you can see last.next is pointing to this first node and temp.next is pointing to null. And as we want to insert this node at the end of a circular singly linked list, we know that after its insertion, this temporary node becomes the last node. Therefore its next should point to the first node. And in order to reach this first node, we know that last next is referring to it. Therefore we'll simply assign value of last.next to temp.next. So it would look something like this. So now you can see temp next is pointing to this first node. Moving ahead. In the second step we simply assign value of temp to last.next. So here in order to insert this node at the end of a circular singly linked list, we know that initially this list contains two nodes, and in order to insert this third node we need to break temp.next link, which is referring to first node, and we need to assign it to the temp node because then this third node will be a part of a chain. So in this step we are simply assigning value of temp to last.next. So it would look something like this. So this link is broken and now it will point to this temporary node. Moving ahead. In the final step we know that as we have inserted this node which is at the last position, we'll simply assign value of temp to last. So it would look something like this. And now in the last step we'll simply increment the length by 1. So friends, here you can see the length of the circular singly linked list is of size 3, as we have 3 nodes with data is 1, 8 and 10, and the last node next is pointing to the first node. So friends, this was the demonstration of the algorithm. Now let's go to Eclipse and see the working code. So friends, in my previous tutorial, I created one class by name circular singly linked list, and we implemented circular singly linked list into the class. So in this tutorial, we will simply write a method which would insert a node at the end of a circular singly linked list. So I'll create one method as public void insert last, and to this method I will pass an integer value which will actually hold the data of the list node. So in the first step, we'll simply create the list node by name temp, and we'll pass the data into the constructor, and then we'll provide an if else block. So in the if, we'll provide a condition as whether list is empty or not. So we'll simply check whether last is equal to null or not, or we can also call isEmpty method, which we have discussed in my previous tutorials. So friends, if the list is empty, then we'll simply assign value of temp to last, and in the second step we'll simply assign value of last to last.next, which we discussed in the slide, and in the else part. So in the first step, what we do is we assign the value of last.next to temp.next. In the second step, we assign the value of temp to last.next, and finally we assign the value of temp to last. And as we discussed in the slide, once we insert the node at the end of the circular singly linked list, we increment the length by 1. So length plus plus. So friend, this is the code to insert the node at the end of a circular singly linked list. Now let's test this method into the main method. So in the main method, I have created an instance of circular singly linked list. So let's add few nodes at the end of the circular singly linked list. So here we will add the nodes which we saw in the slide. So insert last, and let's say I provide data as 1, and if I print the circular singly linked list by calling display method, you can see when I run the code, it prints 1 because initially circular singly linked list is empty, and when we insert one node at the end of the circular singly linked list, we only get this one node. Now let's insert one more node, and I provide data as 8, and when I run this code, you can see it printed 1 and then 8. So therefore it inserted 8 at the end of the circular singly linked list. Now let's say I insert one more node having data as 10, and if I run this code, you can see it printed 10. So friends, here we inserted 3 nodes at the end of the circular singly linked list. So first we inserted 1, and then we inserted 8. So 8 was inserted at the last position, and finally we inserted 10. So you can see the 10 is inserted just after 8, and which is the last node. So friends, in this tutorial we discussed how to insert a node at the end of a circular singly linked list. I hope you like this video. Please like, comment, share and subscribe my YouTube channel. Thanks, have a nice day.